Hey guys, Dr. Holly here. I'm an associate professor at the University of Colorado Anschutz Health and Wellness Center and co-founder of the 16-week transformational program Stay to Slim. And I'm doing this video, as you can tell, from my house. I'm headed out to Laguna Beach, but I wanted to go ahead and quickly get out a week 2 recap. Talk a little bit about week 2 of the 16-week transformational journey that Kathie J and Larry are going on, and tell you kind of what's happening in week 2, what's behind the scenes in week 2. So week 2 is still really about the diet, really about what they're eating, their nutritional plan. That's what's doing the heavy lifting, just like I talked about in week 1. They've got to figure out how to stay on the plan. You can see from a lot of their videos, meal prepping starts to come in, and I was so glad to see that. I was glad to see Larry really embracing that meal prepping. Kathie was doing the same, realizing if they don't plan and have foods with them, that's when you get off. That's when you get off course. So there does need to be some meal prepping, but then it gets easier. And that if you have foods with you, you don't get hungry and you can stay on easier. They're still on phase 1 of the diet, which is only 2 weeks. So this is the last week of phase 1, designed in Stay to Slim or the Colorado diet to really get the fat burners going. Taken anything out of the phase 1 diet that I've ever seen be a problem in terms of stopping someone from losing weight. Burning fat is really what it's all about. We want to burn fat, not just lose weight. So the diet's designed specifically in terms of how many meals, the composition of the diet, the things that you're not allowed. If I've seen any food or type of food or macronutrient in a certain amount tend to blunt fat burning, we've taken that out. Really designed to cause fat burning in any person. But to adhere to it, meal prepping, planning, thinking ahead, all key. And Larry and Kathie did a great job in week 2, and you can hear in their videos, that was a big part of what they spent their time on. The big part of what they've thought about is how they're gonna get these meals in. They didn't wanna be hungry, how they were gonna stay on plan. We're gonna be moving to phase 2 of the diet. It's gonna be less restrictive, and it's gonna be a little bit easier for them. But these first 2 weeks, pretty restrictive, pretty difficult, but it was only 2 weeks and now we have the fat burners going. So that's kind of what's going on with the diet, the Colorado diet, and yes, they're losing weight, they're doing great on that. The other big thing in week 2 is we start talking about the motivational fire. This is something that I think is critically important. You know, when people start a plan, they always say, Holly, what should I eat? What should I do? And yes, the what is important. You've got to be on a good diet. You got to have a great exercise plan. You got to know what to do. It's got to be evidence-based. It needs to work. But the what alone is not enough. I mean, how many times do you know what to do? You have a good what. You know what you should be doing, but you don't do it. It's the why, it's the motivation, it's what's gonna make this stick long term. So in week 2, right up front, we start addressing that motivational fire in Stay to Slim. It's the one thing people come into my office and clinic all the time and say, hey, how do I keep my motivation going? I know what to do, but how do I keep my motivation going? So week 2, we also did some heavy lifting in terms of that motivational fire. We call it peeling the onion. We call it finding that deep private why, that thing that's gonna motivate you. But I do like to think about it as a fire. You know, if you think about a fire, it goes up and down. Fires burn strong sometimes and they ebb and flow. It's not always a big, huge, a big, huge fire. Sometimes it's simmering a little bit less. That's just like motivation. And so I think about motivation as a fire, and I think about there's internal and external things that we can do to keep that fire going. And that's a big part of phase 2, and week 2, of Stay to Slim. So we talked a lot about external motivators for their fire, and there's a lot of them. You know, the fact that they're coming to see me every week is an external motivator. It's outside of them, and it's motivating them to stay on plan. The fact that they're sharing this with you and getting vulnerable and, my goodness, out there talking about it on the radio and willing to share their journey, that's an external motivator. That's gonna keep them on plan because they've put themselves out there. They've gotten vulnerable. That's an external motivator. And that, I like to think of external motivators like gasoline on the fire, right? If you pour gasoline on a flame, on a fire, what happens? Whoosh, it's great. It makes the fire bigger. It works. It gets the fire started. All those things. But how long does it last? External motivators, putting gasoline on a fire, how long does it last? Not very long. It's a big flame, boom, and then it's gone. And that's okay, we just gotta know that. So external motivators are good, but you gotta understand them. the thing we're doing in week 2 is we're now also working on these internal motivators. I like to think of it as the coals of the fire, right? You want gasoline sometimes, but you also need a hot bed of coals. Coals are what will keep a fire going even when it's raining, right? Even when it's really hard, those coals will keep you going long term. Stay to Slim is all about long-term success, stopping that yo-yo. So we've got to start developing these coals, this bed of coals, this motivational fire. To do that, I call it peeling the onion. You got to get really deep. You got to go in there and figure out why you're doing this. And it's not the first thing that pops into your mind. Everybody says, I want to be healthy. That's why I'm doing it. That's true, but that's tied to something much deeper. We want to get into really what's going to motivate you, why you want to do this. And when you peel the layers and you get down to that deep motivation, it really is a way you want to feel, be, or live. It's something that is part of who you are, part of how you want to live your life, that you want to accomplish. And I sometimes say, if that's not true, if you can't get to that deep emotional why you want to lose weight, why you want to be fit, whatever you're trying to do, if you really don't have an internal why, the chances of you being successful are very, very small. You can have the best what in the world. You can be on the best diet. You can be on the Colorado diet. You can be on the very best fitness plan. But if you don't know why it's super important to you at that deep emotional layer, and the reason we call it peeling the onion is because when you get to that deep layer, you're very, very emotional. It brings tears to your eyes because it's something that's truly important to you that's maybe missing or not where it could be, and you want it to be. And it's just part of who you are, how you want to live your best life. So week 2 in Stay to Slim, and what Larry and Kathie J are going through right now is peeling the onion, trying to get to that deep internal motivation, what's going to keep their fire going, why they're going to do this, not next week, because next week they're going to do it because y'all are watching, they're going to do it because I'm going to weigh them in. They're doing it for a lot of external. We got that gasoline on the fire. But 16 weeks from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, it's the coals of that fire, that internal motivation that if they've done the work and figured that out and spent just as much time on why they're doing this and as equal time as to what they're doing, that's what's going to make it stick. And that's why we spend so much time on this in Stay to Slim. So the tidbit for you, what can you take away from this? No matter what you're doing, whether you're trying to lose weight or whether you're trying to get fit or whether you're trying to reduce stress, whatever you're trying to accomplish, you got to have a good what, but you also need to peel the onion. You also need to start thinking about what is your motivation? What is that deep motivation? What's that internal motivation? What are the coals of your fire? Get emotional. Go into that private place and say, why do I really want this? Keep asking yourself, why is this important? And it usually comes down to a way you want to feel, be, or live. It's emotional. It's not logical. It's emotional. So when you get to that emotional place, now we got something. Now we got something that's going to work. So tidbit, no matter whatever you're doing, kind of this is your takeaway. Peel the onion. Spend just as much time on finding that internal why as you do on what you should do. Right? Just as much time. That's what's going to allow it to stick. And if you can't get there, if you really don't have an internal why, if that motivation isn't there at that core level, I would say you maybe should change your goals. Your goals really aren't going to be very likely for them to be achieved long term. You may need to change your goals or dig a little deeper and make sure and see if that internal why is there. So that's what's happening on week 2. They're killing it. Support them, guys. This is hard to do. It's hard to get vulnerable. It's hard to share your journey. Imagine you're doing all this and you're sharing it with lots and lots of people out there. Lots of external motivation, but also can be really, really difficult. So encourage them, follow their journey, help them, support them, and we will be back. Week 3, we get an indulgence meal, and I will tell you all about what an indulgence meal is, what it isn't, and why I think it's super important when you're trying to lose weight. Bye, guys. See you next week.